We are ready to start cranking out some Python. We have a local development environment set up, which means we've got a place where you can consistently run Python on your computer. You've got a basic understanding of how Python works with your computer, what it is, and then we've run some basic commands. What we need to do now is get in the weeds and actually start coding. And I want to do a real quick optional video. You don't have to watch this if you're ready to start coding, but it's just sort of my perspective on how programming concepts work, so that you understand why we're starting sort of at the basics instead of at the more exciting stuff, which some people will do. I have up on the screen something that's called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's a tool that psychologists use to describe the way people's needs work. It's a tiered system, so you can see the layers as you go from bottom to top. The next layer up does not matter or will not satisfy unless everything on the previous level is taken care of. So starting at the very bottom, those are the most basic human needs, things like food and water and shelter and warmth. If you don't have those, that next layer up, right, security, so something like having a job, doesn't matter, right? It's important as a person, but it doesn't matter if you don't have any food. You go up that next level, family, social structures, love, those things are incredibly important. And the goal as a human being is to work your way up. But if you don't have a job, or maybe if you're sick, those things won't be able to satisfy. They won't do their job. And I'm not a psychologist. I'm sorry if I'm not doing a great job explaining it, but you get the idea that as you move up the pyramid, you're becoming like more fully to the goal of that very top one, self-actualization, which is things like creativity and spontaneity and morality, and those types of things are where human beings want to get to. But to get to them, you've got to start with each layer before. Programming, I believe, works pretty much the same way. You want to start up at the top, right? You want to hit self-actualization if you're a human, but if you don't have any food, that's silly. You want to get up to the very top here, where you're working on something like a large language model. That's what ChatGPT is right now. That's the hotness. That's the big thing, and that's where you want to start. Except down at the very bottom here, the actual starting place is going to be variables. Following variables, we're going to talk about data types, or two very fundamental building blocks. Okay, objects, or they're actually called dictionaries in Python, lists, other things like security. Okay, these are absolutely core to being a programmer. Doesn't make any difference what language you're in. These are going to be relevant. As soon as you move up, you get to something like Python or Java. Okay, maybe you get to an architecture style like object-oriented programming, or something like functional programming. These are still key, right? These are still incredibly important, but they won't matter until you get these taken care of. You go up another level, and then maybe it's very specific things like Python 3.11, right? The things that happen inside there. Okay, it could be Spring Boot is a Java framework, right? That's important, but it's not as important until we get to the very top. And I'm going to put up here Pygame. That is what we are going to use to make our game here in a little bit once we got this other stuff figured out. Okay? What's a real world example? Well, here's a couple technologies that you may or may not have heard of. All right, Flash, and then I'm going to put next to it AS for ActionScript. Below that, Cold Fusion, and below that, I'm going to put COBOL. Okay, these are all programming languages, or I guess at one point they were jobs that were really big time. It was easy to get a job as a Flash ActionScript developer. And I had friends who didn't really know how to program, but they did know how to do Flash. Okay, there's always some overlap, obviously. As soon as those jobs went away, they were toast, right? Cold Fusion was the same way. It was Adobe's programming language, and all of a sudden that market dried up and got replaced. COBOL has been out forever. There's still, I'm sure, COBOL jobs out there, but they would be few and far between. You can also think about it like this. If you go and look on a job posting site for, say, right, somebody's looking for a greenhouse painter, you would look at that and think, this person's confused. They don't quite know what they want. Nobody's a greenhouse painter. You're a painter, right? Or a red house painter, a brown house painter. You're simply a painter. And that's what would happen. Someone would reply to the ad and say, hey, I'm a painter. I'm happy to paint your house green or red or whatever you want. You're learning how to program by learning this stuff. If you try and jump over it and go straight to Python and learn specifically how Python works, it isn't that much different, than saying, hey, I'm a Python developer. I can't learn anything or I don't know anything else. No, you're moving in the direction of learning how to code. Not how to code in Python, but how to code. That's what this bottom tier is for. Okay, so again, this is how I think about programming. This is why I prioritize this stuff in this way. And in the next video, we're going to get started on variables. I will see you there.